Good afternoon to you, our dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Douglas Drekonen. Welcome back to this episode of the Youth Roundtable. Joining me to discuss this week's topic, which is focusing on the young people's perspective on the state of education of this country, I am joined by a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us put perspective to the conversation. In no particular order, I'll introduce my guest and also let them say hello. Then we dive straight into the conversation. I'll begin from my extreme left to my immediate left, and then we get into the conversation. You're most welcome, Mr. President.
Thank you, Drake.
Yeah, very happy to have you once again, Regan Mwebesa.
Yes.
And we're looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you. You can say hello to the viewers.
Hello, viewers. My name is Regan Mwebesa. I am a former student leader, specifically a guild president and multiple other capacities at Chambogo University. I've led from nursery up to university, and I do believe I am going to contribute whatever I can to this conversation from experience as someone who has studied in the Ugandan context from zero to a pending graduate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you. The only lady on the show, Mary Blessing Nadongo. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hello, viewers. My name is Nadongo Mary Blessing. I served as a sixth guild speaker, Victoria University, Kampala, and currently serving as the president for the PFM Young Leaders Mobilization Commission. I'm delighted to be on this show where we're going to engage pedagogically. And like my brother Regan said, that he has been part of the Ugandan system from word go. I have had a chance to be part of the Ugandan system and also a blended system of learning at Victoria University, which we know is a private university that is spearheading in advocating for a better education system. So I can't wait to engage with you all.
Definitely. Looking forward to having an interesting conversation with you. Congratulations, Jerome,
Thank you,
on completing your LLB.
Thank you.
Very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Drake. Hello, viewers. My name is Jerome Okware, and I'm now a lawyer. Just graduated last week at Uganda Christian Universities with a Bachelor's of Law. I hope we are able to address some of the issues in regards to the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerome Okware. Regan, let me just begin with you this conversation. The Sunday Monitor addressed and found a couple of interesting facts regarding the state of education in this country. One that caught my eye was something that they noted that for every 1,000 shillings the government spends on a student or pupil in this country, a household spends 1,450 shillings more than the government. Putting perspective into the state of education in this country, a few weeks ago we saw the Honorable Minister Matthias Kasaija making mention of an increase in funding of education in this country. But the current state of the education in this country seems not to be improving, but rather declining. Let's pick your thoughts.
Thank you, Drake. I really thank the organizers of this space for this specific invite to talk about education. Because I believe the biggest way you can transform a society is by educating people.
Definitely.
And I believe education spans even beyond the classroom. From as far as where you're born, to the society within which you transit, to the classroom, and even to life after school. The learning process is deep. But I'm going to specifically break down the classroom kind of education. Of course, not neglecting the fact that the knowledge that was imparted in our fathers in their societies of identity, of discipline, of ethics, of moral upbringing, itself went down. Maybe because of people's work, stress, and priorities changed. In the past, my grandfather's interest would have been my father should be left with land. These days, my father may even focus on more material things than my grandfather did. So it means that he's all out there and not physically with me, so he may even barely know. You may even find, in the moral sense, students are given society disciplines. You find I've been in boarding from nursery up to university. I may not have a trait that my father typically imparted in me, but I attract the traits of so many other kids with which I was in school. So now I'm going to talk about the reality of class. I think government of Uganda, it would be unfair of us to say they have not done anything. They have done something in the education perspective. They have set up multiple public universities. They have had initiatives like free primary education, intentional, because even the president made it clear. If someone bills a student, let them leave the school. So it means that it is intentional. They have had USE that is not fully free. And they have also aided some schools that are, for example, church founded to see how to lift the education. But the reality of the Ugandan education is that we are not yet there. But also the comparison that we have as a Ugandan system with other systems should be questioned to what extent. Because if you, for example, compare Uganda's education system to the UK, you're not also being fair to a certain level. Because this is an economy that can buy Uganda and even use it for farming if possible. They are economically far ahead of us. However, if we also look at the budget of Uganda specifically, you notice, yes, there is an increase, but we are not prioritizing what matters the most. Because a recent occurrence of arts teachers showed that, yes, it is not priority for education to some extent. Because when you find a teacher, for example, in an economy like a science teacher, earning almost 4 times less than what his colleague earns, you don't expect that person to deliver as much as the other one does, because even the level of commitment differs. Because this one is even subject to part-time because of the consequences that originate from the funding in itself. So, yes, our education system seems to have a significant decline. 1, because of the model. 2, because of the way it is crafted in itself. Because I've seen scenarios where we joke about failure in Uganda, where the executive secretary of UNEB speaks on TV and says, oh, students have failed biology, and everyone is jubilating that biology is a problem and not questioning why it is a problem. We have had a system in the past where we are just skilled to pass exams. And I can tell you, Drake, even if I'm given a new combination now, I will use a week and perform miracles. But that doesn't mean that I've understood the concept. Our education system recently, after the new curriculum, seems to be coming in a line I hoped and prayed for Uganda to have, where we question innovativeness, where we spark the creativity. Because I've been a student of land surveying at Chambogo University, a public university. But a student in China at 14 may write a code that I may barely understand, yet I've gone as far as my first bachelor's degree. It takes a certain level of intentional input from my side to fit them. So I think, yes, the government has done something. But the decline is, 1, because of the model of funding, where, for example, public universities run under the consolidated fund. Chambogo University, Makerere, and other public universities all pay money to URA. That money is put in a pool that is called consolidated fund. And after the money is reversed back to universities. But now what makes things harder is that there are times when you will spend a month at a university with a requisition at ministry, not paid, because there is no money. Because in the economy they have not collected enough tax. Forgetting that this is an institution that runs on a daily basis, must impart knowledge on a daily basis for a year. So the funding, for example, for public universities, I once had a chance to speak on behalf of guild presidents at State House and informed the head of the state that our prayer is that we have a semester-based funding where we collect money and it comes back per semester and not per quarter. Because if you, for example, bring money in the first quarter, students are not at campus. It may not have been as functional as when this money is released in the 6 months of a year, in halves of a year. So the education system declines because of multiple reasons. But I think we can highlight the funding, 2, the model of education, and 3, the delivery of the craft. Because yes, you may actually find the concept is as deep as the best way we want it. But the people that break it down to us have not understood what to be the deliverables. So as I wind up, Drake, yes, the government has done something, but a lot more has to be done, especially stakeholder engagement at grassroots, from primary to secondary and to the extremes. And the last thing that the government should focus on, and the Ministry of Education in particular, is reach out to the employers and find out what is expected of us, such that we don't attract, for example, the science that is no longer applicable. We are in a highly evolving world of artificial intelligence, of multiple emerging technologies, augmented reality. And if, for example, a science student leaves a university without knowing the current trends, sticking to the old, then that person is not employable. And we've had growing rates of unemployment.
We shall get to that, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your very, very succinct analysis. Your submissions anchors on 3 key things that is signifying a decline to the state of education in this country. One, your argumentation anchors on funding, that because of the funding that, of course, education is receiving, there are question marks that, of course, fit into the reasoning decline. And then secondly is the model. How are we delivering or imparting knowledge? And lastly, you focus your submissions on grounds of delivery, which in line is still very, very relatable to the model. But let me get to you, Blessing. From the submissions of my brother, you get his viewpoint on his analysis on the state of education in this country. I would also love to pick the same from you as we get into a deeper discussion.
So thank you so much, Drake. And thanks, Brother Regan, for your submission. Now, I'll give my perspective. I don't know specifically on what, because he has mentioned 2 things. The reasons why our education system is failing or performing fairly and not at its best. And something also to do with funding of the education system. As you started to question him or to ask him to give his perspective, you talked about the government spending roughly 1,000 shillings on every student. Is that in primary school?
Yeah.
In primary school, and households spending more in support of their children at school. And that is one of the biggest dangers to our education system. You see, we are in a country that believes that education is the way to success, something like that. And they really praise it as they speak. However, they're not doing much to support their statements. Because how is something that you value so much that cheap to you? How do you give the children of this soil 1,000 shillings for their education at a very important stage in life as primary, where a child is still growing? The brain is very active at that stage, and therefore we expect that the children of this soil can be as innovative as possible at primary level. They're still discovering their strengths and what they can do best. And then you fund them 1,000. Do you really wish the best for the system of this country? And do you think you'll have a brighter future as you claim? Do you think your education is really the key to success when you fund it like that? So for me, the funding is so low in my perspective. And I think that we can do better. Generally, talking about the education system and the method we are using, I'll date us back to the pre-colonial times, that the Eurocentric education system that was given to us focused on the needs of the society then. And back then, what did we need? Remember, this was a pre-colonial period where we had our African, Afrocentric systems. People would gather, learn, and do certain things. If you take an example of Uganda, they had different groups of people. They knew that the men, first of all, it was gender-based. They knew that the women have strength in certain areas and the men have others. So the men would go to hunt, they would be taught how to hunt, maybe look for food and provide security in the different communities, while women were taught how to take care of a home, nurture, and maybe craft, things they could do at home. And that was aligning to the needs of the society. And once that was fulfilled, we consider that society at its best. So it was an education that was focusing on our cultures, our strengths and characteristics, our roles, gender-based. And then there comes the colonial times, where our colonizers come with another system. They realize there's something good in Africa, so they have to introduce something new that will work for them. Their interest was in having their, territories, commercial territories, or whatever they call them. They call us. So they had to put a system where they will raise a group of elites that will help them execute whatever they want to do. And so what did? They introduced to us a system that is mainly about literacy and numeracy. But what does literacy do? Basically teach you how to speak English, their language, and also learn more about their cultures. We know very well that the missionaries that came here, the ones that played a big part in bringing an education system here. They built those missionary schools. We all know them. Most of us have been part of them. In my primary, I was in a missionary school in Busia, Damani Girls. So these schools, they were mainly for teaching us the culture of the colonizer. However, they realized that we can't do it alone in this setting, in this country. It's foreign to us. So we need to raise people, locals here, that can help us in our administration and the things we'll be doing, people we can send around. So they start teaching you how to speak English, speak and write English. They also teach you how to do some mathematics. So that when they give you some money, you know how to count and all that. And then it's so sad that even when we attained independence, we did not move from that. We remained with a system that is still on literacy and numeracy. Until of late, around 2020, I think, when they introduced the competence-based curriculum, did we have to take all those years? And all those years, we've been failing in our education system because we clung on something that was focused on the needs of years back, needs of a colonizer. Yes, it wouldn't be bad for a few, because by then they needed that workforce, really. It wouldn't be bad for a few to learn some English and how to count and all. However, it would have been blended into the Afrocentric system that we had, that looked at the characteristics of our people, that looked at our needs as a society, that also incorporated our culture. We didn't have to throw that entirely away. And so what would that mean? That when you're teaching us literacy and all, can you also allow us continue teaching some skills in our own language? Can we also continue using our resources that we had in Africa at that time, our skills that we had, and just make it better? If you're talking about hunting, could the education system would have focused now on moving from just teaching the locals to hunt, let's say the men who used to go hunting, but now we can teach them how to build these reserves for our wild animals and the things you're seeing, like Uganda Wildlife Authority, game parks coming up. Our people would have still done that themselves without the influence of a foreigner or having a foreign education system to have to teach them that.
Yeah.
No,
Let me
we
just-
didn't need that.
Yeah, let me just hold you there. You bring or introduce a very interesting angle to the conversation, juxtaposing the Eurocentric and Afrocentric modes of education, which I would later on ask you as a follow-up on, does this reflect the high rates of unemployed but also unemployable graduates in our system? Something that I would like you to come to respond when I get back to you.
Okay.
But let me get to you, Jerome. We have gotten the perspectives of Regan and Mary Blessing on what they think on the state of education. Regan argues on three major grounds: funding, model, delivery. The argument or the angle that Mary Blessing takes is focused on, of course, she goes back into history and talks about the model, which is the Eurocentric and Afrocentric, that there needs to be a blend to both. And she pokes a very interesting question, that why did we have to wait all these years to come ahead and revitalize or possibly revise our education system? And I've asked her a question that she'll answer later in regards to, does this possibly explain or correlate with the mode or with the unemployment rates, but also does this respond to the question of unemployment and the unemployable graduates that we're getting in our system? Now, getting to you, you recently just completed your graduation. I think it was last week on Friday, 4th of July. And the question that I would like you to ascertain or help us now get into the discussion is on the issue of employability. She brings out very interesting insights to the conversation. And I just want us now to move into employability. True that the system that we had before focused mainly on literacy and numbers. But now we are having a very huge unemployed young people on the streets. People argue, or people say there are jobs, but the young people do not have employable skills. So as a graduate and as someone who is just new in the job market, what are those key employable skills that you think young people that are looking for employment should focus on, so as we can possibly lift off the burden from the government on questioning them on the state of education in this country?
Thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah.
So one of the things actually that is scary for us that have just graduated is the fact that now we have to look for jobs. Yeah, and it's not scary that we just have to look for jobs, but it's also scary that these jobs are scarce. You know, yes, as you said, these jobs exist, but the people that are taking up these jobs are not freshly graduated people, maybe persons that have just left university. These are people that have been working, you know,
Gained
for some
experience.
time. Yes, have gained experience. So usually when you're looking for a job, the very first thing they're going to ask you about is experience. What's your work experience? You don't expect someone that has just freshly graduated to have experience in that particular thing that they have studied. For example, I do not have as much experience in law because I just graduated last week. You get? So what happens is that we tend to divert from what we studied. For example, I'll start looking at business. You get? And this is, yes, a very, very important skill that we need as young people. We need business skills. We need this because this is where we all divert to after we have failed to get what we studied for. Yeah.
Now, on that point, fail to get what we've studied for, because that's exactly what I was looking for. You see, when we're young, I also presume you were saying, when I grow up, I want to be a lawyer, and I want to go and save lives. And recently, we have seen a couple of graduates who have studied a particular field. They're either in town in selling gadgets, or someone is opting for, of course, riding a motorcycle. Yeah, all those jobs that people are now opting to create for themselves instead of pursuing what we have done. What has the government, or where has the government gone wrong in its responsibility of, first of all, educating a nation and providing an environment that absorbs the people that they have created, but also give them the skills that are necessary for them to thrive in their field?
Just like Mary said, long back then, we were taught a boy was taught how to become a man. Knowing that when I grow up, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I will do to look after the family, and this is what a girl is supposed to do to make sure that she keeps the home and so on and so forth. In other words, these people were trained up for the future. Now, Uganda today, in our education system, we are being taught to think in a particular line. For example, if someone studied, let me say, medicine, that person is not taught anything else about business. They're not taught anything else about business or any other thing outside medicine. So that person comes out knowing the knowledge I attained from school is what is going to bail me out of maybe any situation, is what is going to help me put food on the table. Reaching out, it's a whole other different situation. And then we have to divert into business. But the problem all comes with, we have not been taught to think outside the box of, what we are studying. We have been taught to think within a particular field, and we are ignoring the other survival skills, I was reading a particular article, and they were saying in South Korea, a child from primary is being taught how to live on their own. They're given this mentality of there is no one going to save you. Yeah, so you have to find a way of providing for yourself when you grow up. While for us, we are being pumped with so much things that are not necessary really, because I've studied chemistry. I know you studied chemistry. I've studied biology. I studied geography. Yes, I remember some of those principles. But right now, when I need a job, those principles are not going to benefit me. I need some business ethics. I need some business, some principles in relation to business, some principles in relation to innovation. All those. And now that I'm going to learn outside school. But then what's the point of paying for all these years that I've been in school if I'm not going to get the knowledge that is going to bail me out in the future?
Okay.
Yeah. So where the government has failed to address in relation to unemployment is that we are ignoring the fact that it should all start from school, because we are seeing certain clinics being formed, where certain clinics being held where people are being taught how to invest. We are seeing people being taught how to do this and that, but that's all outside school. What if it was taught in school? That I come out knowing that, okay, yes, I have my law degree, but I also have some business skills. I also have some farming, agriculture skills. I was talking to some Nigerian friend of mine yesterday, and she told me that from primary, they do agriculture science. So by the time this person reaches secondary, this person already has maybe a farm or something, because we're not going to start saying, okay, land is a problem. No, you could have land in the village or something, but at least there is something you're doing with that land,
Yeah.
So that by the time you reach a particular point, even if you want to start up a business, you have money coming from the farm, then you start up your business, and then before you know it, you're not job seeking, but you're instead, creating. Yes.
Rugan,
Yes, sir.
the argumentation of my brother Jerome here centers anchors on your argument of modeling, the model. And I want you to now I want us to engage on a deeper understanding of the model that we have as a country. A model that she asserts that we have taken so long without revitalizing or revising, to give us an angle avenue that can help us produce a generation of people who are employable, of a generation of people who think outside the box. Right now, you have someone just goes in school because they say, I finished senior 4, finished senior 6, I have graduated, and their next thought is, I want a job. That's the mindset that many young people have. Someone is not thinking, oh, I want to create this, I want to create that one. Even though someone wants to create something, the access to credit is quite hard. And I want us to talk about the model, but also the existing factors that influence our status quo as a country in regards to education, but also the standard of living of the young people. Yeah.
So, Drake, I need to be pardoned such that I first make a light comment
Sure.
on what my brother Jerome was talking about, of specifically looking at where is the government not doing well, first of all. the system, the current system, is more of a mindset kind of formation, where it's put in you that I myself will attend primary school, and it is my father's primary responsibility to make sure that I attain the best primary education, which comes at a very huge cost. There are primary schools where a child in nursery pays what almost the government pays for a sub-county in very local settings.
True.
So you find that now my grades in primary shall take me to a decent, for example, traditional school. That's if my father can afford, and university. The mind that I should make money out of what I studied strikes towards graduation or after my final exam. And that is very limited time. A 35-year-old in Spain is thinking about retirement, while a Ugandan is getting their first decent job. A 40-year-old in Argentina is looked at as almost as a pensioner because he has almost outgrown the system. Yet a 40-year-old in Uganda
He's
is
beginning.
at the professional
Life begins
epitome.
at 40.
He's into consultancy, he's looking at a master's, and this is where the challenge comes in. Now, our system, for example, should be crafted in a way that if I'm studying land surveying, I should understand how to make money out of my profession. Because there is even business in our professions. We have lawyers who have made money out of law itself, not even going to court. They have understood the dynamics of where do I earn. A very knowledgeable lawyer, for example, is for example into copyright, and he understands how we can make money out of this, even without suppressing or fighting with any judge or insulting any government official who is in charge of the law. It doesn't necessitate that. The fact that I may notice that real estate is the deal for a land surveyor after school is unfortunate. That I notice that, oh, maybe I need to raise money for an acre and cut 8 plots with good roads out of it. But even by the time I raise money for a decent acre that is marketable, you may find the only acre I can afford is in Lukunjiri at 3 million, and plots may be at 500,000, and you may even barely get clients there. Yet in actual sense, if the system made me understand this from the word go, taught me how to partner with people, partner with banks to invest in estates, I would make money out of it, even without necessitating me applying for a job anywhere. So the government needs to incorporate intentionally the entrepreneurial bit of our system and the innovative bit, where I may also not just study to go and survey people's land, but I can also study to come up with an instrument that even a Chinese may wish to use because of the software I created. Because, for example, the most recent surveying software that we use from China is created and coded by 15-year-olds. What does China do? At 12 years, when a guy's mind is still sharp, he's sent to Spain by the economy itself. After sent to UK, specifically in England, for example, this child by 17 has multiple ideas and a different way within which he looks at life. So this child will come back to China and write a code that even a Ugandan professor would struggle to interpret. So now, I think our system needs to also be tuned in the business sense, because business is the reason why we run to business is not specifically not because we are not employable. No, the reason why we run there is sustainability, because it's also age is not waiting for us. You graduate at 25, you've done a 4-year course, you get your first job at 27. You need to marry because society is demanding. You need a decent life. And you find that by the time you start, that's why you see even corruption rates are insane. Because you want to have what Matia Kasaija has worked for in 40 years. Because that is what society needs of you, because we have very unhealthy competition. When we are buying from shops and markets, they don't rate us at age, but they look at our buying capacity. Now, back to the question of the model. I think the reality is, I really resonate with what Mary has said, that it has taken us insanely long to change to the competence-based learning. And the model in the past, for example, for the curriculum, has been questionable. Because in for example, super grown economies, they will assess what you can do. In my former school, we had career options on our reports. So when you would perform extremely well in arts, you would find they have made you a lawyer, an arts teacher, a history teacher on your report. So now, if your interest was to, for example, be an engineer, you had to realign your energies. And I was so lucky that I went through a system like that. But it should be also on air that this is a system that was started by missionaries in 1922. So somehow, competence was assessed. And now, let's go back to my colleagues that I left in Dukunjiri. What were they taking in? Go to class with the chalkboard, teacher has chalk, write notes. Store the notes, wait for the exam timetable, read for papers, write the exam, pass. For us, we shall credit you. He's a spark, he's extremely intelligent because he wrote the exam and excelled in the exam. But in reality, we shall even laugh at a student who was a leader, who took major decisions on behalf of fellow students but did not excel. You say, no, he left the path. He didn't do well. But in actual sense, these are people who transform the society. So the model needs further crafting because there are areas that we don't look at that are important. Areas like skill and talent, which are the biggest payers. The richest people in this world are not academicians. They have built on other people's concepts. Uganda's model never even had an element of continuity. Elon Musk, the richest man to ever live currently, he even surpassed Mansa Musa, the richest human in history, has built on a model that Nikola Tesla left of AC, alternating current, and it has made him insanely rich. Look at the Zuckerbergs. They have simply created systems that are not there. The biggest paying websites, TikTok, YouTube, it is simply building algorithms that resonate with people's minds. That if Drake likes a political video, that shall become an algorithm for Drake to supply him with the content he needs to consume. That is why you see media has become addictive. It would have been boring if it was random, but it is not random. The server selects for you an algorithm that best fits you. That if Mary Blessing is a person who loves community, he may end up with only videos of the community, which may be boring for Drake and any other person. That means that these guys who have thrived and made it out of the crowd have lived in societies and systems that have made them who they are. Look at now, that is the rich in the context of the world. Let's come back to Uganda. Who is rich and who is not? People who have invested in hotels, which have no new thing by them, which are an extract of travels. I've traveled to the UK, I've learned something, I've come and constructed, and people love the concept. For example, we have minimal, extremely minimal room for developers, for innovators in the current model. Because we write decent research papers. For example, my final year research is extremely phenomenal. But even the audience that consumes it is minimal, because the accommodativeness, or the way with which, the level to which they trust us as Ugandan graduates is extremely low. You find, for example, I'm writing a paper that comes up with a software that would have made life easy for a doctor to track a patient, location details, as a surveyor. But this doctor shall trust a software made by a student in China, and he is right, because that student spent 6 years learning the code, while Reagan spent 3 months doing this research to write the code. It means that the amount of being questioned is beyond. So the model in itself wasn't so bad, but I believe had areas that were crucial and left out, especially with co-curricular, with talent and skilling of the learners. And it also needed, and has not yet even still, to transit from training people who can retain. They need to start training people who are beyond retaining what they are told, to thinking and building ideas. And I think this is the reality that we face when we come to the employment world, that you're faced with multiple scenarios that you didn't take assumptions to in class. So you find a lawyer who has a client who is extremely heartbroken, but still very unapologetic and rigid. But in the actual sense, in class, you are not told on how to deal with such people. You find, for example, a land issue where even the Attorney General may not advise, because it is complicated. Someone has letters of administration, for example, and another one has, it is a mess. But we need a practical system, a hands-on system, and a skillful, innovative, and most importantly, as I wind up, we need this new model to be crafted that learners must understand the business sense of whatever they learn, because I do believe everything has business in it. Medicine in itself, someone can be a pharmacist, someone can make a drug, like Kazire. He's a very good example. He did industrial chemistry. But his herbs that he makes out of the reasoning he extracted from the course are all over Africa. We have a doctor who did Covidex, for example, in Uganda. He wasn't taught that in class. It was as a result of nature confronting you. You see, the biggest things that we create as Ugandans are out of consequences. You know, they say when the going gets tough and nature dictates, even people, if, for example, you find the soil is acidic, it means that if you're to stand on it, you may need to be jumping at intervals of a second, not to be burnt. So you find that many of us have been forced by reality to adjust from practically what we were told to what the society expects of us. And this should be incorporated in our system such that we have exactly what society needs of us, and we can think in line to bring out the need, because there is where need comes and the books won't answer. But if the model trained me to be
Proactive.
an open mind and a practical person, I would be a person worth delivering what is expected. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mary Blessing, I asked you a question earlier on, and I would expect you to maybe respond to that. But then secondly, I would also want you to reiterate on the issue of the increasing dropout rates that we're seeing in primary school, over 60%. That the people that enroll in primary 1, by the time they reach primary 7, we lose 60% of that population. What's not going right? First, answer the other question, and then we get to that.
Well, thanks, Drake, and thanks, Regan, again, for your assertions. They're really very informative. Now, the question of unemployability and the rates of unemployment is something to do with our university education. You see, with our education system, we believe that one has to go through the 3 stages, of course, primary, secondary, and then tertiary, for them to qualify for employment. That's what we have set for our society. And I think that it's a result of our system of rule, capitalism. You see, capitalism makes you think in a certain direction that will enable you control society properly, you know? Keep them in school for many years, and as you keep them there, I mean, give the rules. You must have a transcript from a university for you to be what? Employed. But in reality, is that so? Don't we have people? Recently, our brother Eddie Kenzo posted jokingly, no, someone posted about him. It's like the reason as to why, okay, they were asserting that it's wrong to say education is what? Is the key to success. Why? We are seeing people who didn't go through all those stages of school succeed. And so what does this speak to? It speaks to our reluctance in embracing a better education system, especially at tertiary level. As we embrace the competence-based curriculum at secondary level, O level, it's still at O level actually. They're trying to see how to incorporate it also in A level. But university, we are leaving out university, which is very crucial. Because now it's the stage at which we believe people must get out into the world to work. Even though I believe that it would have even been earlier, but because the system has dictated, and like the Constitution says that education is the responsibility of the government and parents, you know, they made it a responsibility, a right for us, but a responsibility of the others. So they dictate what happens to us. However, for you to be able to make it in this world, you don't need an education system that has been forced on you by government. If at all, it is not making you a job creator. If it is not making you an innovative person that can take on the globe. Because now we are in a time where we must take on globally as Africans. And the competition is stiff, times are getting harder, we need solutions and we need to compete favorably on the global market. Now we cannot continue to think the way we thought in the colonial times, that we are still looking at the English, speaking too much English, you know. When you're out there in society, what shows that you are campus is that you can speak fluent English. That is no longer applicable today. Even if you speak your good English and you have no skill to offer the world, you have no solution to offer, you are as good as useless. And so it's time for us to change our mindset about the education system that we are getting. Can our parents, can our leaders try to transform their mindset? Can they allow the people that are innovative in society, regardless of their language and whatever, how they present themselves, what should matter are the skills? And now that brings me to your question, to answer it clearly. And what is causing unemployment and people being unemployable is purely the colonial system, the Eurocentric system that was given to us. Because it can be Eurocentric but works for the Europeans. They have a different education system that works for them. They don't base their the qualifications of their children on grading. They provide grading, but in a different way, not like us. That you must have a distinction one for you to be considered brilliant, you know, and useful to the society. If you didn't pass in grade one, and in that grade one you must have A's and what, those things don't work. When grading people, first of all, we must understand that everyone is unique in their characteristics, in their abilities. So we must provide an education system that embraces their characteristics, also addresses their mode of learning. Not all students have the same speed of learning.
Sure.
So does our education system address that? Because when students come, let's say, to university, do you know that Mary Blessing learns maybe faster than this other person, but however, it doesn't mean that that person doesn't need the time of their instructor to take them through what they can get best so that they can deliver. So we need to put all this into perspective when we are talking about the question of employability and employment, if the products of our universities are going to be useful to the society. So the system that we have that is mainly focused on literacy and numeracy has still failed us and is still continuing in universities. Right now, when you talk of competence-based curriculum, they are not talking about universities. Universities right now, they're only pushing so much STEM, science, technology, mathematics, entrepreneurship, but how they are doing it is, I think, still not as practical as it should be.
Yeah.
To have these people get out to the field, and they are, for instance, and the research that we do, undergraduate research, it is purely just academic research, yet it should be practical research. Practical research in a sense that after you have given your report and collected your data, analyzed it, whatever, can you transform that into a project? Do you know that when you transform your research into a project, already that is a job for you? Because through your project alone, you could earn billions and actually contribute so much to your community through just one project. However, we are only marked for our report after data collection. You've passed. They give you either your 80% or 70%, but no one tells you that, there is no provision for our university students to transform their research into projects at individual level. So imagine everyone with a good research proposal, his mind in different fields, and everyone is just out there doing something. It doesn't have to be in the city. We can take it back to the grassroots where we came from. I can simply say, okay, I did this for convenience. I ran this research. I collected my data in Kampala and all, but I'm running my project in my home district. That is, your project alone gives you what to do, a job, and employs others, because it must help you as you continue running this project. If it is on health, occupational safety, I'm doing my research on occupational health and safety, how many people are in different occupations in my district? How many projects are those that I can do in a year? How much money is that I can earn for myself? If the projects are good and actually end up into maybe some products also being produced within the project, there is a lot that you can do. When we talk about occupational health and safety, I don't only go to address the issues in the society, find out what the different employees are facing and employers at their workplaces. No. If I realize that they need better gadgets, I move ahead, get people, train ourselves. How do we get these gadgets produced by ourselves as Ugandans? Yeah. So one project, it's offering education for the masses. It's also venturing into producing the required equipment for those workers in a specific area. Yeah. So that is the kind of practical research these university students need, but not many are giving it to them. Very few universities are offering, let's say, career guidance. Now, career guidance...
Let me just hold you there and bring in Jerome, then we go for a break. Jerome, she was expounding on the point of career guidance, but I want us to connect that point to the quality of education that the various universities are offering us today. Is it up to the standard?
Honestly, I would not say it's up to the standard, because I'll use myself as, since you've talked about university, what I studied in university was law, so I'll use myself as an example. Yeah. Yes, I did study law, we studied law, we graduated, and yeah, all that was okay. But the quality, yes, the quality of the education, looking at the material that is being given, yes, it was good. I would say it was good. However, we, like she said, we are still relying on the education systems and sometimes even the material that was given to us by the British. And you find that this does not apply to us, because there are certain laws you read and you will see that this actually is not for today. Even if you use this particular act, you would not succeed, in a particular matter in court, because that's not what it is in the current situation. So the quality of our education system, especially in university, is not, let me say, it's not, for lack of a better word, it's not up to date. We're not moving on with what we need today. Yes, some of those things addressed problems back then, but right now we need new things, we need new ideas, we need new ideologies and principles to be taught to us. Like my brother Regan said, we are being taught how to, say for example, we are being introduced into the world as doctors, but we're not taught how to make money from that particular thing that we have learned. So we end up having wise men who are poor, you know. We have the knowledge, we have different things. You know geography, I know chemistry, I know this and this. But all that knowledge we have failed to use, you know, to better our own lives. So we end up finding that someone that did not actually go to school and got the basics outside school succeeds in the same field that we are in more than us that actually went to school. So the quality of the education, yes, when it comes to the material that is being given, yes, you can learn geography to the maximum and you get everything right, but there's that small thing that we are missing, you know,
The
the practicality, the principles that govern the, you know, the day-to-day life experiences. How does the geography I learned fit into this current situation that I'm in? You know, I want to join politics, but have I learned anything about the history of my country? Have I learned a lot about Uganda? Do I know more about the French Revolution than I know about Uganda's own, you know, history? So at the end of the day, we end up having not only unemployed people, but even those that are employed, sometimes we end up having someone that is incompetent in a particular office, just because, yes, the papers say you got an A, you got a B, you got this and that, all that is important, but then you reach there and you fail to actually work as you're supposed to work.
Okay. All right. Interesting. It's been a very wonderful half of the show. We're just going to take a short break. My name is Douglas Trekonen. Stay with us on Civic Space TV. See you.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break. Just before we went into the break, we've been discussing youth perspectives on the state of education in this country. And of course, we've had a very interesting conversation in the first half of the show. But let me start with you, Jerome. Just before we close, I know I cut you short. And I just want us now to get back on, of course, discussing the base of this conversation, the actual numbers. Earlier on, I had posed the question to Mary Blessing, which I know she's going to respond to because she was already talking about a couple of issues. On the issue of the dropouts, we have noticed, according to the article that was produced, it shows that 60% of pupils who start primary 1, by the time they reach primary 7, are dropping out. Let us speak to this alarming situation. What is going wrong, even when we have even when we have the free access to education that the UPE that this government ably talks about? What is going wrong?
Thank you so much, Drake. On the issue of dropouts, really, I would like to attribute the increasing number of dropouts to still back to the to what is provided in the schools.
Yeah.
You know, in these UPE schools and USE schools, students are taught the basic things, you know, biology, chemistry, math, science, you know, those usual things.
Yeah.
However, a student is not going to be told, because if you're looking at the issues, what is causing dropouts, you're looking at things like early pregnancies, early marriages. We're looking at, of course, there is also the funding part. But if you're looking at issues like early pregnancies and early marriages, you know, these are things that should also be addressed in schools. I remember there used to be something called PSA. You remember?
Yeah.
PSA. And PSA taught us the dangers of HIV, the dangers of having sex at an early age, the dangers of things, those small things like free gifts, free lifts, and all these things were meant were meant to teach us and make us aware of the dangers of these particular things that are causing dropouts, increasing number of dropouts. So what I want to point out is that yes, the mathematics is good, the science is good, the English is good, but there needs to be other sessions that should be introduced in schools, counseling sessions, career guidance, like you said, because a student with a lot with enough information on career guidance, knowing where they want to go and how they should live their lives, how they should get there, would not easily mess around, leading to dropouts. And then maybe another big issue that I would want to say would be funding, the funding. If you look at the amount of money that we have allocated to the education sector, looking at the financial budget, it's I think 5 trillion, out of 72 point something trillion. So 5 trillion is just 7% of the money that was allocated for the national budget. On Saturday, that was 6th, the World Bank released a new report showing that Uganda, in this region of East Africa, Uganda invests the least amount of money to public education. Yeah. So we end up having teachers, teachers that come to class when they want because the money that they're being given is not enough. Then you end up having inadequate facilities. You end up having schools without libraries. So a student goes to school and does not really reap from the school. At the end of the day, what have you gone to do? You've joined class, you've entered class, you've met new people, you've learned 1, 2, 3 things that are not going to benefit you. Before you know it, you're back home. So at the end of the day, even the reasons for dropping out I would say would look more reasonable to the person that is actually studying, because if I'm not benefiting anything from the system, why should I carry on with it? Why would I stay in school? And then also looking at the systems, like schools have made people look stupid. It's the truth. You come to school believing you can actually read, you can pass your exams, you can what, but the mode, as we have already discussed, the mode and how we are assessed at the end of the day could make someone think they're actually stupid and they can't make it. So you end up, you've studied primary, how many years? 7 years. Your assessment is in 2 days. You do PLE for 2 days. And in those 2 days will determine whether you're able to go to secondary, or make you, will also determine on how people will look at you, whether you're wise or stupid. What happens in case I read something and it did not come? What happens in case I misunderstood something? So at the end of the day, we have people dropping out of school also because, they just don't believe that school is for them. They don't believe that school is for them. They don't believe that actually, okay, because so and so made it, I can also make it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Regan.
Yes, sir.
Something he talks about in terms of cost, which I want you to expound on, because the cost of education in this country is seemingly more expensive. If the government of this country invests 1,000 shillings per student, the household is investing 450 shillings more than what the government is investing. Education is a prerequisite or a mandate of a government, because a government ought to educate the nation. And right now, that responsibility has been left to individuals in of course, not just guys, in the hands of parents. And that is quite costly. Now let's talk about the cost of education vis-a-vis the quality of education.
The cost of education, please permit me, Drake, to use a minute or two to talk about school dropout, because it's a huge worry, and it spans beyond even just primary and secondary and even university itself, where you find 100 students are admitted, 36 graduate. LDC, people fail more than people who pass. You get it? We've had classmates who entered campus in 2016. I was in secondary at that time, and they are now simply waiting to graduate or have now given up. 10 years down the road, cumulatively. So the system it empowers malicious people more than genuine people. The success of a student at public university is in the hands of a lecturer, and it's quite unfortunate. For example, there is a lecturer who asked me, where do you get the time to stand as a guild president, as a land surveying student, because it's a very serious course. The last student to be admitted for my course had 17 points in PEM. So that shows you how serious the course is. So now, there's, where do you have the time? So that, if not well answered, can even attract a bias from this lecturer. So, very many malicious people have been empowered by the system at higher levels of learning, and this has cost students. The mode of assessment is one of the reasons why dropout rates are growing day by day. Because if I can study for 9 years in primary school to use 2 days for my fate to be determined, it is extremely unfortunate. Okay. If I can study 2 years specifically in physics, economics, and mathematics, for example, countless hours, more than 100 hours a week of assessment, because I study Monday to Sunday in a private secondary school, for example. So I study 100 hours times 52 weeks in a year. You get it? For 2 years. And I'm assessed in 6 hours. Paper 1, 3 hours. Paper 2, 3 hours. That is not fair. If I can study 17 topics and the questions only come from 3, what are my success rates if at all the 3 are the ones I didn't grasp so well? Why is it a burden on me that I should have 4 teachers teaching one subject and have 1 brain answering a paper set by 4 brains who are even graduates? You get the science. So, I am going to get a time when I'm overwhelmed by this system and quit. Because this is not a cross that I must die for my books. We go back to secondary school. The dropout rate has very many other influencing factors besides the assessment, which is the payment. Education has what we call the bare minimum. For example, at secondary school and university, there is a minimum that is expected from your side as a student with your parent, which is not just school fees, which is requirements. The requirements I was using to study my course at university are more expensive than the tuition. My laptop that is to the standard a surveyor should have can pay for my 2 semesters of Chambogo, for example. So where does this leave a student from Chegegwa on district quota who may not afford the requirement? He will quit. You get my argument? So the requirements themselves, you see a shopping list that is almost the cost of fees at secondary school. You are sent to bring brooms, you bring rags, you carry detergent, you have carried literally everything a shop has. If you're a school owner, you may even have the biggest shop in this country because you have from papers to tissue. So the system has empowered those that require so much of us, and it's not a self-regulating system. That some schools, a student can pay. I was at St. Mary's Chitende, and what I was paying at Chitende could potentially pay for like 6 other guys in my home district. And that means that even the quality is going to be significantly different, because the tutor or the owners of Chitende shall try to meet the quality that is up to the payment. That means that my quality of life will be far different from a student who is going to sit the same exam like myself, be assessed like myself, but I've had the privilege of first-class education in quotes. So
then that speaks to the inequality that we are having.
That speaks to the huge inequality. It's not just measurable, it is immeasurable inequality. That you find learners who are extremely good in every concept and those who have absolutely no idea, and both of them are being briefed to sit exams at the same sitting. So dropout speaks to the funding, the regulation of the funding, and dropout speaks to how assessment is done. And lastly, dropout speaks to the society and the norms. Because you imagine, in, for example, Chitende setting, I went to class with the national team players, the likes of Bobos Biaruhanga, all that was my cohort. And these are guys who are earning millions before we left school. I hope you get my argument. Like, what motivation am I having to stick to this book, yet I'm seeing someone who is using their just feet to earn, and I'm equally carrying a pair? You get it? Now, that is also going to get to a point where I question myself and say, why am I even sticking to this where I'm not sure? Yet in actual sense, there are other things that would make me sure. Now, back to, you asked about quality?
Cost vis-a-vis quality.
Cost vis-a-vis quality. Yes, everything good comes at a cost. That one I've learned it as part of the reality in life. Even bad things come at a cost because there is something to learn out of them. So now, the truth is, for us to get the right education, we must invest. And that is where our government is failing us. That yes, you have set up the structures. You have given us the teachers, but you have not given them the equipment. So that is why my father, who thinks that is the key to success, will sell his land for me to go to a school where the requirements and everything is available. The cost of education has been reduced by government according to what they say. But even when you find that you have a budget of 70 plus trillion and you're spending 5 on education, it means that you are not putting in enough. Because we are saying this is the backbone of the economy besides agriculture.
Human capital development.
And yes, why are you not focusing on seeing to what extent? The reason why we may not totally exploit the point of quality versus cost is because it all goes back to what is expected by the parent and by the society itself. It is true, the government at extreme levels of education, PhD, masters, and bachelor's scholarships, does well, because you find students of electrical, top-notch courses, great courses, law, in public universities, and it's the government that pays and even affords them a decent life. But this is, for example, in a population of Chambogo that has a population of 37,000 students, has 1,000 government students. I hope you pick my point.
Yeah.
Makerere with close to 40,000, 1,200 government students. That is almost negligible. If for us in physics and in science, any value that is close to 0 in percentage can be ignored. So that is almost a portion that can be ignored. So the cost of education is extremely high for good education and still extremely low for moderate education for all.
Which majority of Ugandans?
Which majority of the Ugandans can afford. Because a Ugandan who is said to earn $1 per day may not afford to pay 6 million in an international school that is competence-based, top-notch competence-based. So, yes, Ugandan government has tried to a certain level, but it needs to either multiply its effort by 10 or by a percentage that I may not well bring out, because there must be a lot more done in terms of investment. Good education comes at a high cost because it has multiple requirements, it has multiple facilitations. For example, I have accepted that one of the most expensive things in Uganda today is data. But data is the fastest way a student in Uganda can access the internet, can have blended learning like my sister from Victoria University. Usually when they would speak about it in Chambogo, we would almost swallow everyone. Because why? Wi-Fi is scanty. Airtel data and MTN data, they can barely sit on the phone. Data goes exactly after buying it. You buy, receive a message of buying 50% in the next 2 minutes, 80%, and the one of 100% doesn't come. It's up to you to check. So that is where the challenge is. If, for example, the government thought it wise to improve our internet, blended learning, online learning, cloud storage, us understanding the codes, because there is literally only one platform where you can code offline. All these others are online. You may need to, for example, tap into an international criminal court session as a law student. And what does it take? Mobile data. But you may even barely afford data for an hour. Streaming.
But besides even data, if you look at in terms of the bandwidth of internet in this country, it's negligible.
Drake, there are places in this country.
If you look at electricity coverage in this country,
recently, even areas where we have electricity, it is not there. UEDCL seems to have mood swings. It is also something that maybe we should pray and discuss one day. But Drake, there are places in this country where online learning can't happen. I can give a very good example. In Shema district, specifically Shema North, it is not my home. I usually run there for business and a few errands. There are areas where not MTN, not Airtel can locate you anywhere. And it's unfortunate. These are prime locations, very near the town, less than 10 kilometers from the main town. So now you imagine if a learner goes for holiday and lies to himself that they're having blended learning, you may come back the next day when people have graduated.
True.
So the infrastructure, network infrastructure,
cost of internet
is as well one of the reasons why the prices of education, especially good quality education, keep skyrocketing.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mary Blessing, as we edge towards the end of the show, what I'm interested in is the girl child. A couple of factors influence girls from dropping out. One, of course, is the menstrual hygiene. Two, we have issues of early pregnancies, which is, of course, influenced by a couple of factors, cultural among others. Help us, expand on that, but also relate it to the issue of education that we're experiencing today.
Thank you so much, Drake. And when you talk about the girl child, we're talking about an entire society's success or failure. Because the girl child is the nurturer. We are products of a girl child. And so it's very crucial that the education they attain is the best. At worst, if the government can't afford to fund girl child, everyone's education, same level, same amount, at least let there be an extra fund towards the girl child. And this shouldn't come just as affirmative action, because affirmative action has a limit. It's just looking at having these girls that have already succeeded, and how we can incorporate them, let's say, into university with their good grades. Can we make their grading easier by adding an extra, let's say, 1 point? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about genuinely looking at the needs of a girl child and knowing that 1,000 that is allocated for a student in primary school is not enough. Because talking about menstrual hygiene, these children need, the pupils need the sanitary towels to use while at school. And I think in modern societies, they have made these incentives available for students and pupils. And I don't know if we as a society in Uganda ever look at such, because you don't only look at someone attaining education, but the enablers of that learning as well. And so if I have to be at school and I have to go hungry, and then maybe as a girl child, I have to be embarrassed when I start my menses and I have nothing to use, then why would I be there? And to make matters worse, we're in a country where it is known that the qualifications of primary education are almost useless. Because tell me, at university, they ask for your primary.
It doesn't.
Personally, I don't know where I kept my primary.
Can't take
Right
it
now,
now.
I cannot. You get what I'm saying? And yet, this is a level that has like 7 years. 7 years. Primary education spending longer than what we call the key education of secondary, where maybe someone is mature and can make their own decision independently. And primary is taking longer.
I think primary is just
So tell me why.
for growth.
Yeah, I know. Tell me why a traditional man in Africa won't think of taking their child out. Because for them in the traditional society, they didn't look at literacy and learning English. They looked at a girl child maturing and being ready to take care of a home. And one of the things that marked their maturity was reproduction. So the moment you start your menstrual cycle, I mean, you're mature enough, you can give birth, so we can marry you off. And so it becomes a temptation. The education system, the primary education has become a temptation for parents who are not as learned to give their children away to marriage. And it's one of the reasons some of the pupils drop out. Then the question of the time is long, and yet the qualification takes you nowhere. And so we need to rethink. And to add on to that, we also have alternatives now. These other skilling hubs that have been set up. Some are by government. State House, I think, set up some
Skilling hubs.
regions. Yes, in different regions. But we also have the vocational. So a parent looks and like, instead of spending these 7 years, I'm going to be hustling. First of all, I'm poor. The transport for this child to go to school every day, have to feed them because the government is not providing, then uniform and all these other things, plus them spending all the time there, yet they would be helping me maybe in our business and all. Alternatively, they can go at least for the skilling. And now that speaks to us as a country. If a parent in a village can opt for skilling of their primary school child and they actually make it in life, then I think that there was a scam when developing this education system. That primary level still perturbs me. Like, is it necessary to be there for those 7 years for a child to just identify what they can do best and then get their hands onto it and start practicing something small? Because I want to believe that normally we are mocked and someone posts a video or a picture of Chinese kids in nursery busy trying to make cars while ours are in class singing and clapping,
Waiting for
playing. And I'm like, and we know these things, and the government knows these things, the Ministry of Education is aware, but they let it be because there's also another disease that has attacked our country: privatization. When people have their schools and they are private and they're now making money out of, you cannot stop them. And now with the greed of the government, because they need taxes, like, now how shall we stop? How shall we halt the system? The schools are now many that are private. When you talk about free education, preparatory schools alone, where kids are now paying over 700,000, more than a university,
the
you know.
others paying 2 million,
And
3
then,
million, just nursery school.
and then the government is like, shall we lose these taxes? And then you look at primary, as much as the government schools are still facing challenges and not performing at their best, some private ones are doing well. For you talk about schools like Kampala Parent School, and for them, yes, parents there pay a lot of money. It's for the elite, and they're doing well. And actually, you may find that their curriculum is not like ours. So for them, the primary school education is benefiting their children. And so you start debating, what do we do? Do we halt or do we adapt? Now, what the government should have done is adopt a system that some of these good, thriving private schools are using, and then make it a public, that is the minimum for our public what? Schools. And then also provide a school feeding program. Make sure there is food. This cuts across not only the girl child, but all pupils need to eat. Someone cannot go to class on a hungry stomach and study from morning to afternoon or evening. It is not practical. But also, let's identify the strengths. When a girl child comes to school, for us, they say we have a sixth sense. So a female pupil in P2 is not thinking like a male pupil in P2. Well, for you, you're thinking that I still have to learn A, B, C, D. Just in my environment, already I have identified certain things, because for us, we even learn from parents. So given that I'm using primary school as an example, given that it's closer to the time when we are mostly with our parents. So there are small things I am learning from home, from my mom. Now for you, you're still teaching me A, B, C, D, what? And I'm already thinking about how to organize clothes, making the shelves neat and all. Now imagine a primary school education where people come and, depending on their different genders, they are taken straight away to some skills. I always tell people primary school is not too early for us to go practical. Even when the competence-based curriculum was introduced for O-level, I still said no. It was supposed to be introduced at primary, because it's the foundation you build. Now, what does it benefit you to bring a good system in between, yet the foundation was broken? Take it direct to primary. Just like I've used an example of the Chinese and others that are thriving, that they start introducing these tools and equipment to their pupils at an early stage. So a girl child knows, given that there are some practical challenges that affect us, like menses. Right now, we wouldn't be having campaigns where people just contribute 5K to buy sanitary towels. A girl child in school, that is where the gender roles come in. That it would be mandatory for every girl in a primary school to learn how to produce sanitary towels. And I don't think anyone would refuse if government passed that. There must be, just like we have biology labs and what, there must be a hub, a skilling lab for girl children, because they're good in crafts. They can make some of these things. And so they're in primary and they're in their vacation and they're already having something they're doing. If it's not for money, at least it will be for social responsibility, to help their other fellow girl child out there.
Actually,
so
it shouldn't be about the money. It should be the social
yes,
responsibility.
and so that they gain more experience. So we make it more interesting for them and practical. Let them get interest. But now when I come and it's still A, B, C for P1, P2, I think. P3 is where they start. We used to write with pencils in P1 and P2. Then P3, we are learning to use a pen. What a boring system. And then P4, math is just getting a bit tougher. So you're starting to learn more numbers. And then P5, 6, 7, you're maturing, learning history, and they start teaching you about the geography of different people and all. Boring system. Not practical at all. It makes people lose interest so much. And now parents knowing that that qualification takes you nowhere, I would also opt to just take my child to a skilling hub for those 7 years and somehow pay for them to do the UPE, the exam, and then get them into competence-based. So we are seated on a time bomb. We need to revise this, especially if it's going to favor the girl children, so that they are not diverted. Recently, also, I was talking to a certain neighbor just in where I stay. Yeah, last evening he was telling me his brother had a child in primary school, day school, and it's like, I noticed some teachers were starting to look at my girl. So that brother was telling him, I took my girl from that school. That some teachers I noticed were starting to look at her. Now we also have an issue of morals and our values.
Okay.
As Africans, let us revise that because the girl child needs to be in a very safe environment. I know that men love to look at Nyash, but don't be so insensitive to the extent of looking at also a primary school, because we've heard of incidents in newspapers, defilement and all. So some of these also scare some parents away. So it's like, why would my girl child be in a school where the men are promiscuous, they're watching at it, because now for us Africans we have nyash, okay, with the exception of me. But nyash is everywhere. It should be a normal thing. Let us not make the environment unsafe for the girl child.
Yeah. Your concluding remarks.
Yes, and maybe to conclude, I'll just encourage us to embrace maybe a better system of learning in general. Andragogy is a very good learning system that looks at blending Eurocentric and Afrocentric learning. I feel like when you hear people talking about work integrated learning, these are not concepts that are alien. These are things that are doable even here in Uganda. Let us embrace them. A child, let's say at university, can be at work like here, and you can still access your education online and still things go on. But it also shouldn't just be a matter of work integrated learning. Let this work integrated learning be really purely skill based. The question of being employable will come with the skills you have, not the qualifications you get. Let us move from the grading system of looking at A's and B's and first classes and B class and all, and look at the skills. If we glorify the skills people get vis-a-vis the grades, we are going to see results in this country. Because there are people like my brother Regan mentioned that in public universities, the malice is too much. So I imagine a student that is brilliant and has skills in something, but was maliced and given maybe an O or an F. So we would lose if we only focused on grades. Let us focus on skills. Let our education system be work integrated. Let us embrace andragogy, where at least we look at the characteristics of a learner, their mode of learning, how fast are they, and then also the needs of our society. When we put all those together, we will have the best out of our education.
Thank you. Jerome, your concluding remarks.
What I would suggest in summary of all this would be, we need more funding. Yeah, to the government, we need more funding in the public education sector. We need more teachers, we need better infrastructure. We should not have situations, we should no longer have situations of students studying under trees with the weather conditions that we have in Uganda. We should not have situations where there is no, basic materials like chalk, libraries. So we need more funding. We need to invest more in the education system. We need to have more efforts put in. Since they are now revising the curriculum, at least let's go all the way. We give it more funding, we give it more attention that it deserves, so that we can have better education.
Thank you. Mr. President, your concluding remarks.
My concluding remark, of course, I can't conclude about education. that of course is deep and beyond. But of course, because there is always need. But my parting shot for today is, we need education reforms. Especially one of my suggestions would be reducing that primary school period. It seems to be a growing center. 3 years of lower primary and 7 years of primary, 10 years to be examined in 2 days. To me as a scientist, it is practically not very good. But I think the government is doing something, especially something to do with competence-based learning. We request that so much more is done, especially at universities, funding needs to be intentional and not this consolidated. Of course, government's worry is because people may even swindle this money because we've seen such things happening before. But the consolidated fund and funding for public institutions should be semester based and not quarterly based, because semester based is better, because quarterly based derails everything and pulls them back up to an extent of even lacking basic requirements. Lastly, something that is very important is government should intentionally do like how professional bodies do. If you're a surveyor, one of the ways you can maintain your professional stamp as a registered surveyor is by providing evidence of training a young surveyor. So government should look at one way of empowering professional bodies to focus on the quality that is given to students. My last story is recently Chambogo admitted many students for architecture, and the Uganda Society of Architects came to find out whether Chambogo has actually that capacity. That is a very empowered body. That means that they care about the quality of fellow professionals that are in nurturing. The same should be done for accountants. For example, where 1,000 are admitted at Chambogo, 1,000 at MUBS, and 1,000 at Makerere Main. Yet in actual sense, the professional body would have known what is the minimum or the maximum these universities should give. So I think government needs to empower professional bodies to find out the quality, because they are employers themselves. These professional bodies are in direct link with employers who give the basic minimum requirement of a graduate. Unfortunately, government has also, in some scenarios, been rumored to fight professional bodies like UNATU, which have caused it headache, and several others. Uganda National, I think, Medical Doctors Association. We've seen government in loggerheads with them, yet in actual sense, they're supposed to help them, empower them to follow up on the quality. I'll be looking forward to any other time to come and have a discussion on this and so many others. Thank you so much to the organizers and to the dear viewers. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Regan, Mary Blessing, and Jerome for taking time joining us in discussion. To you, our dear esteemed viewers, for always watching and following, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Center for Constitutional Governance. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and of course watch the channels. Follow us on our various platforms, on TikTok, on Instagram, and on X. We are at Civic Space TV and at the Center for Constitutional Governance. My name is Douglas Trekonen. See you same place, same time next week. Bye-bye.